Buddy, so I had a request to do a video talking about different ships and what you use different ships for. He was actually asking more also about, what kind of fleet should I build, what kind of weapons should I put on it, what kind of specials should I put on it, that kind of jazz. And that's not really a question I can answer all the way through, because if somebody asks me, well, what fleet should I build next? That is like the most vague question in the world of battle pirates. What do you want to do with this ship? What kind of stuff do you have? What do you expect to come up against? So let's do this. Let's pull this up. Let's actually close battle pirates so I don't kill the. Now. So this is about the swath of ships you can work with. If you're a lower level person, you're probably working against the first row, and maybe you're starting the second row. In all reality, most people, gunboats, skirmishers, they're really just scouting ships, lead ships on fleets where, like submarine fleets, where you just really expect them to die and they don't take any time to repair. That's about all they're used for. Longboats. Hold on a second. Okay, let's see how that's going to do. Longboats. They're about your first ship that has any usefulness to it at all as far as like attack purposes. Probably the most useful thing on a longboat is a Havoc torpedo. You could probably do. Throw some armor on there, maybe. I don't know, something. Actually, if that's as much as the armor goes, then you might just want to say, don't bother with it. Probably do 4s, maybe not. No, be stuck in the 3s. If you could throw a 2 up there, that'd be kind of cool. It's probably your first real fleet to actually have anything like that. And then don't forget, even with gunboats, you can put Havoc 1s on there and take out any cargo up to and including level 17 cargo. Alright, Marauders is a very common thing when you first start off the game. A lot of people go to that, and what I used to use a lot was, it's very easy to upgrade to Thud 4s. I think I had engines 1 or engines 2, I don't really remember. And then you can armor these. You can armor it up to the point where, let's see, last 5-minute bonus, Master Fixer, so you could throw more than that. I don't remember what it was. 2s? Something. You could throw enough armor so you're up to about 400 or something like that, and I thought it was 500, and it's instant repair. So that's a common thing. Predator subs. This is the most common thing to start off with for killing cargo and stuff like that. Once you get Predator subs, don't throw any armor on there. Throw the best engine you have on there, and then the best Havocs you have on there. This is a refittable ship. This is probably your first refittable ship. Yeah. So you're going to start with whatever Havocs you have, and you can upgrade them over time. It doesn't take long to throw on a new. It doesn't take long to throw on a new Havoc. You're only looking at 1 hour to change out the Havocs if you if you only have 2s, put 2s on there, and then when you get 3s, you can refit it to put the 3s on there. Still, I wouldn't bother with armor. You still have to wait for the repair on them, and your goal for subs is not get hit at all. So when you first start out, you're gonna sink. You're gonna screw it up. So don't increase your repair time by adding armor. Battle barges is a very common thing to use if you're early. This is a nice little early base hitting kind of thing. You could probably do 1s or 2s. Probably only have maybe like a level. This maybe 7. One second. And then maybe these guys. I don't know. Whatever armor to fit. You can take a fleet of these guys out. This is actually pretty easy to come up with. I don't know, maybe you're doing something like that. Maybe, but you can also even start out something smaller and go to 1s. Because flak on really early bases kind of sucks. So you could put some armor up there, and now we'll flee to these suckers. And you'd actually do pretty good in a lot of really early bases. You know, 1s, they don't have a lot of power, but they don't miss. And not like mortars, especially the early mortars, have a very wide spread, so, and they're laning forever and not really hitting anything. So it's actually a pretty neat little ship. Arbiters, for low-level people, do not build these things. I've seen too many people build arbiters that are low levels. The only usefulness for the fact of an arbiter is that armor was higher than that. Well, what's base armor for this one? Okay. An arbiter's usefulness are these things. If you don't have these things, don't bother with them. If you're starting to do these things and you want it for something on an offensive side, microwave dampener is your way to start going about it. You could probably get to level 2 pretty easily. Level 3 takes a little bit of work. The other two common ones are the subsonic, this one for the subs, and the engine disruptor. Those are common ones you'll see in bases. And now they have the it's not in here. Now they have the blitz drone things, but those are event things and not stuff that you would normally pick up. Leviathans are your first real workhorse. It can hold armor. It can hold a decent amount of armor. It holds a reasonable amount of guns, and it's a double special ship. You can hit bases with these. By this time, you should be picking up blueprints. So, you know, something along. You need a bigger dock by that point. You know, you can throw some decent armor on there, probably. Maybe you worked during one of the events and picked up some hailstorm. You know, maybe at this point you now have some real reactive armor. And then, I don't know, something else. With a lot of times with mortars, figuring out what your other special is, it's kind of up to you to try stuff out. You know, maybe you don't have this, maybe you only have these. Maybe you don't even have a level 9 dock, you know, something like that, right? Yeah, something. Okay. My recommendation is usually to hold on. My recommendation is usually when you get around the Leviathan area, research Seawolf. I might even skip Leviathan and go research Seawolf, because a Seawolf from a usability point of view, hitting cargo, fleet versus fleet fighting, raids, that sort of stuff. Seawolves have much longer legs. I still use Seawolf sometimes, and I've had them forever because they have like a neutral evade. So if you throw any evade on there, you get all of it. See, that's 33% evade, 33% evade. There's no negative evade on here, so it's easy to get the evade higher. You know, it's got 5 weapons, which is pretty decent, and 3 specials, and that's really the trick, is the 3 specials. And it's a reasonably fast ship. Combat speed is 14 naturally, so if you throw some engines on there, now you're up to something that actually has a little bit of legs on it to move. So usually what I would probably do is go Seawolf, and then go to DU4 armor for your turrets. And then once you have DU4 armor for your turrets, then come back and do Floating Fortress and then Hammerhead. When you do Floating Fortress, don't build these things. Build this and this if you got it. One of these, whichever ones you end up having at that point. Build a fleet of these while you're researching Hammerheads. Okay, Hammerheads are going to be your first real ship for hitting bases. It has more armor than the Floating Fortress, and it's a little bit faster. Let me show you something. If you don't put a gun on here, then when I switch between the two, it'll disappear. 10 versus 8. It's only 2, but they're both slow, so at that slow of a speed, it really makes a difference. It's possible with an 8, you're not going to make it to the most interior of a base. So Hammerheads are there. The 10 is about the slowest speed you want to have to deal with. And you could do all kinds of stuff with Hammerheads. You can, by this point, you should be having a lot more options. You should probably at this point have some kind of siege weapon, right? Maybe you have siege missiles by this point, or maybe you have one of the siege mortars. I think I had V siege mortar, and I had E siege missile. So this is a pretty common. So if you do this, and by this time you're teetering level 9, level 10 dock. So you might start with a level 9, and hopefully you have some hailstorms by now. And hopefully you've picked up solid fuel booster because of other things like your Seawolves and that sort of jazz. You're way overloading a so this will be an interesting. That's a level 10. What you can do is probably take one of these and throw an extra gun up there, and maybe 2 of these. Yeah. So you end up with oh, that didn't switch over right. That didn't switch over right, but it's a reasonable amount, and that's a decent Forsaken little fleet right here. Flak is going to be your problem. Another option for these ships is to do the dual siege mortar. If you can do this, really try to get S. That's really where it's going to shine a lot more. Oops. There we go. Alright, now we're a little heavy. There you go. So you can't really run a oh, it's not going to show it. Poop. 10 siege mortars with this sort of stuff. You probably could if you reduced your armor a little bit. Went this road. Pretty close. Pretty close. There we go. Okay, so one of the ships only has 74, and the other ones have about 8,000. That's not too bad. That'll give you 10 siege mortars. S has the smallest spread and the largest splash, aka makes it more accurate and makes it strong, makes it hit more other things when it lands. So that's a reasonable siege mortar sort of fleet. And when you're running Forsaken, one thing that you can do is you can run both fleets. You can run the siege missile fleet as a prepping fleet, take some damage on it when you get to around 25%, then come in with this fleet as a fresh fleet, then to actually take the rest of the base. Because your build times are really not that long. You're looking 7 days a week for each of one of these, versus a lot of the draconian ones where you're looking 3 weeks to build a ship. Oops, wrong button. That's the button. Sea Scorpion, what's the difference between Sea Scorpion and Sea Wolf? Sea Scorpion has a couple more gun slots. And it has much lower evade. It has a -30 evade. So it's not really a great evade ship, and it's slower, so it's not really a really fast ship, but it has a lot more guns. So one thing, the nice thing about Sea Scorpion that you see most people do is those are ships that are protected behind some sort of tanking ship, and it just deals out tons and tons and tons of damage because it has a lot of guns, and it can carry a good amount of weight. This can only carry 2,300 pounds. This can carry 4,500 pounds. You can carry a lot more like assault missiles on this one. You cannot carry that many assault missiles on a Sea Wolf. Most everything else is a raid ship or an event ship of some kind. The two Hammerheads, those were the first two event ships. The nice things about those is they're faster, they turn faster. That's your biggest difference. They can carry a little bit more stuff than Hammerheads, and they have more armor. See, this has a full 1,000 points more armor. The Barracudas, they're really, because they're fast. That's their biggest thing, is they're fast. Spectres, the really big thing is that they stay underwater a long time. Goliaths are friggin' slow. They're not meant to move. They carry tons and tons of armor. Super Fortress, they carry tons and tons of cargo. I actually don't have these. Nobody cares about these. Nobody cares about these. Light cruisers is like the first kind of event sort of ship that people get. The nice thing about a light cruiser is that it has crazy evade, and if you do anything to make the evade even more, then that's your selling point on a light cruiser, is evade. Battle cruiser, that's the most underrated ship in the whole thing. The only negative about a battle cruiser is it only has 4 gun slots. It has 3 armors, it has 3 specials, it has positive evade, it's a fast ship, and it has a lot of natural defenses. It's actually a really good ship. And the only knock on it is it only has 4 gun slots. But even with 4 gun slots, you could do a lot of damage if you pick your guns right. You know, you could make this a tanking ship, you know, tons of evade, tons of armor, and then have 4 Sea Scorpions behind it that has, you know, crap tons of guns. This takes all the damage, or lacks damage because it has really high evade, and this is what deals the damage. You know, you could think about combinations like that. Another thing about ships, about guns, is don't mix guns on a ship. So let me give you an example. So don't do this. Don't say, oh, you know, it'd be nice if I had a couple missiles and then a couple mortars, and, you know, maybe mixing a little bit of thuds. Okay, this is a really bad idea, because look at the maximum range. That's 72, that's 49, and that's 86. Okay, so if you target something, what is the ship going to do? The ship is going to go 86 points away from the target and start firing, which means only the mortars are going to fire. If you want any of these other two to fire, you have to manually push it in further and manually set the ship where all the guns would start firing. So there's a high probability when you mix guns that that not all the guns are going to fire, and if not all the guns are going to fire, why even bother? I've talked to somebody one time, and they weren't even filling all their gun slots with something. I'm like, dude, fill your gun slots. Why have an empty gun slot? You need to have the opportunity to do damage, and if you don't fill a gun slot, you're definitely not going to have the opportunity to do damage. Same thing with distance. If you have mixed range guns, some of them aren't going to fire. If they're not going to fire, then why are they there in the first place? Now, what would be better to do is to do this. If you feel that you need, you probably wouldn't actually do that, but if you feel that you need mortars and missiles, then have one ship of missiles and one ship of mortars. And that way, when you manually target, when you target something, this ship is going to go to 72. This ship is going to go to 86, and all the guns are going to fire. generally don't really, and if you're hitting a base, don't do this. Don't mix mortars and missiles. I've seen people do that before. The problem is mixing mortars and missiles when you go hit a base is bombard and flak. Okay, the idea of what you want to do with your ships is you want to overwhelm something. You want to, if the bombard can only shoot down 10 mortars at a time, then you want well over 10 mortars coming down on it, so that you overwhelm its ability and you kill it. Same thing with flak. If flak only has a couple number of salvos at a time, then you want to make sure you have enough stream of missiles that you overwhelm it and you kill it. If you have half missiles and half mortars, it's very possible that their bombard and flak can handle both, because you only have half the number that's possible. So you need to overcome their defenses with overwhelming firepower, and that overwhelming firepower is not the damage number. It's how you deliver that damage. You have to overcome their defenses. So I'm a big proponent of, if you're going to have a missile base ship, all missiles. If you're going to have a mortar base ship, all mortars. You can you can prep with a missile fleet and then come in with a mortar fleet afterwards. Two separate fleets. That's fine. Do that. Take them both there, and then poke your head in the base and figure out, do they have a lot of flak? Do they have a lot of bombard? Which ship might be a good prep and which ship might be the good actual base attack. You could take them both there and then figure it out when you get there. See what else is going on here. Battleships are nice. They have really good, decent defenses. The only thing that's really bad about a battleship is it carries no cargo, so that it's a negative resource sort of ship. If it's dead, it comes into the dock, you're losing money trying to repair it. It cannot carry enough money to repair its own self. The Juggernaut I don't actually have. Nice thing about it has crap tons of armor. But it only has 4 gun slots, and it has the same number of gun slots as a battle cruiser. So you be careful. This is a very niche sort of ship. Strike cruisers are probably one of your more generic, one of your more versatile ships. It's good for base hitting. It's decent for mortars. It's good for blitzing. It's an okay fleet versus fleet ship, because it has some reasonable speed to it. The nice thing is also has reasonable cargo, and it has good explosive defense. If you're worried about coming up against mortars, coming up against Serbs, that sort of rockets, strike cruisers are a good thing, because it's a natural 40+ percentage for explosive defense. It's easy to rack that up with other sort of specials or specialty armor. Missile cruisers, I kind of ignore this one. Missile cruiser X. Most people right now are using them for base hitting or base prepping. Basically one of the two, because it has a lot of evade for flak, which is a really important thing. Interdictors. This is really a sub hunter. It is a fleet versus fleet kind of ship. I've seen people do them for rimming, for prepping, that kind of stuff, mostly because they can get to the base really fast. Now, that being said, battlecruiser is actually a really good sub hunter too. You put sonar in this puppy, and you can see subs as good as anything. As actually, battlecruiser and stalker are the two that I think I actually see subs the furthest out when they have sonar 3. The original Dreadnought, it's crazy. It has lots of built-in armor. The nice thing about Dreadnoughts, they're versatile because they have 4 specials. That's really where their versatility comes in, is the fact that they have 4 specials. And the trick that you have to overcome, and I had to learn this with Dreadnoughts, is to get the versatility, you might not use all the specials, you might not use all the gun slots, and you might not use all the armor slots, or you're not going to have 5 ships. I got a buddy of mine that has a if you're going to go hit a VM base, a buddy of mine has this fleet, and it is crazy dangerous. Oh, what was his? His was something like this. Probably something along those lines. So you're about 50% resistance to everything, and you have 24 hailstorm. No, is that right? 6 times 5. Oh, 30. You have 30 hailstorms. You know what? You can sit under a crap ton of mortars with something like that, right? A whole fleet of these suckers, and then you have 10 siege mortars raining down on you too. Or you can go the opposite route, right? You can go this route. This is actually a non-VM base. This would be a hailstorm. I mean, not a hailstorm, a halo base that you could go up against. Do 2 of these puppies. You could put this in here. Now you're actually running with oh, this works now. 21,000 building damage. You're running 12 mortars. This is in the assumption that there's no mortars raining down on you. If there's no mortars raining down on you, then you don't need any. Then you don't need a hailstorm. And you have 82% against missile defense, so you'll last against halos. In all reality, for halos and that sort of weapon, whether you have 5 ships or whether you have 2 ships doesn't really matter, because it's going to deal damage to all of them equally. So 5 ships are going to die at the same speed that 2 ships are going to die. The benefit of having 5 ships versus 2 is that when you run into Goliaths and things like that have ballistics, they are going to pick off 1 ship at a time. So when you have 5, then you can let the Goliaths pick off a couple of those while you're still running through. So this is limited use, but it's an interesting thing. That rains a lot of mortar right there. What else would be useful to say? So just to wrap up, cargo, lower levels. Very first fleet should be gunboats and Havocs. The second fleet for cargo should be Predator subs with engines. Engines 1, I think you get on a. It was one of the engines 1 is one of the very first things you can research in an advanced lab. As far as hitting cargo, after that, I think you're up to Seawolves at that point. Missiles with solid fuel boosters 3, and until you get solid fuel booster 3, keep using your Predator subs. You can up its engines, you can up its Havocs. Now, when you do its engines, don't mix engines on a fleet. If you're upgrading to 2, then you need to upgrade all of them at a time. You know, this is only 6 hours for the engine to go to a level 2, right? You don't do half of them and then go start hitting stuff, because you want all your ships to run the same speed, because if they start drifting apart, then you run into other issues like mortars, where the mortar's aiming at the first ship but it's hitting the ones in the back because they're not all grouped together. And when you get solid fuel booster 3, whether you have assault missiles or not, Cutlass missiles will work just fine on these puppies. Put some 3s up there with some solid fuel booster 3, and maybe a 2 in there somewhere, and then throw a little bit of laser in there maybe for good measure. You could put a 3 in there if you wanted to. You got the weight. That's a great cargo. That's a great cargo killing fleet. And if you wanted to go to 3, what you could probably do is drop this down to 2, and then you'd be good, right? You know, that's a great cargo killing fleet. It's also a reasonable little fleet versus fleet. You're gonna you're probably going to die in the battle, but you might do a lot of damage to him, and then your next buddy that comes up to fight that guy's ship will finish it off. And then first, I mean, when you really get into base hitting, I'd go straight for the hammerhead. I'd avoid kind of the floating fortress, but build a set of these just to collect cargo, because you can't collect anything with predator subs or sea wolves. Have something to collect cargo. So build a fleet of these with just a gun on it and any kind of engine or streamline hull that you can do. And by the time you built 5 of these, this might be done researching. Actually, you'll still have a little bit of time left on researching, but build your actual hitting fleet with the hammerheads. As far as raid stuff, what's been popular is ballistics of some kind. Probably one of the fastest raid ships you can build is something along these lines, where you have some engines up there, you have some auto loader up there. And this is where you get into the holy wars of what you do for raids. You gotta try different stuff, right? Whether you do armor or whether you don't do armor. I'm a big fan of getting the raid over with quicker, but other people that have a lot more time, they do the free raids, and the free raids require instant repair, which is like this guy, I think, event repair times. Yeah, so but that's a very fast ship to make. You can, once you get the notice that a raid's coming up, you can actually build all of these pretty much. But if you have a little bit of extra time, I'm probably a bigger fan of going the Ripper route. Because if you're going to coin anything, I'd probably more go this route and then make a fleet of these puppies. Or you either do that route or you do that route, one of the two. You kind of got to try them out, see which ones you like more. And then another option might be, if you have them, because you don't ever know what you're going to run up against, but you could do something along these lines. Do something along these lines, maybe. I don't know. You have to kind of play with the specials to figure out what you like. This is kind of interesting. It gives you a 40 and a 42, so they're pretty close in range. I think they'll shoot together. If you need something with a little bit of splash damage. So, as far as raids go, I have a variety of Seawolf fleets. I would make the Thud one. The Thud one's really quick and easy to make. I would make the Ripper one. The Ripper one's pretty easy to make. It's about 3 times longer to make than the Thud one, but that's probably because I put armor on it. But I'm a huge fan of Guidance Scrambler because that helps protect you from ballistics, missiles, and torpedoes, which are very popular in the event sort of bad guys. The higher level bad guys have mortars too, but if you got a decent enough engine, you can get away from mortars. And then once you have some of these and you've done some raids, then you might be able to have some ships down here. Once you have battle cruisers, I would do battle cruisers first for raids if you have it, mostly because you could do crap tons of armor. You could pretty much get the same amount of damage in there and have a lot more armor. Something along those lines. I don't know. Just something to play with. But I hope that's some stuff to think about, some progression of things. It all depends on what you want to do. These dreadnoughts are good base hitting fleets. This is a good fleet versus fleet. This is unknown yet as to what it's best for. It's good for hitting bases, but we don't know yet if it's good for hitting other ships too. This is a good mixed ship. It's mostly for hitting bases, but you could use it set up differently for hitting fleets a little more too. This one's predominantly for hitting or defending bases. I don't see it get used a whole lot. Battleships, you actually don't see these a ton, mostly because of the cargo. It's actually reasonable for fleet versus fleet. I see a lot for prepping. That's pretty popular. It's an okay blitzing fleet as far as blitzing the base. Battle cruisers, it's reasonable fleet versus fleet. This is really a raid ship. Works pretty well for a raid ship. And it also does a light blitzing fleet. You can make a reasonably light blitzing fleet with this. And the base can't have too many Serbs in it, but you could blitz with this to some degree. You're not going to tear down a lot of walls because you don't have a lot of guns. But the same can be said of the Juggernaut. You kind of don't really use these much, except for just the same reason you use the gunboat. Goliaths, if you can get them, it's just base protection sort of stuff. Spectres, I'm using in raids now because I'm using assault torpedoes on them with the Caterpillar drives, and they're working really well for me. Last raid I didn't spend a penny on, and I got is the ship not in here? The new Arbiter thingy, the Hurricane. Barracudas, I've used those off and on over the years. I've used them for raids some. I use them with Caterpillar drives now too. The Hammerhead series, those are predominantly base hitting fleets. Not that great in raids because, well, these two actually be alright in raids because they turn, but the Forsaken Hammerhead cannot turn for crap. So it's not that great during a raid because you can't turn around very quick. You'd be dead by the time you turned around. Stalker, it's slow, but it has a really good visual range. So it depends on what you want to use it for. Right? I've died under Stalkers before. I think they had batteries and they had probably like concussive shells. I couldn't see them, and but I was trying to kill them. I wasn't trying to run away from them, and they ate me up. Seawolves are really a very versatile ship. It's probably the most versatile ship. Because you can get it just from research, and I have probably 15 Seawolves that I'll use on occasion, and they're all set up differently. Some are set up with some assault missiles, some set up with Cutlass missiles, some set up with Thuds. I don't know if I have any Rippers. Not sure. But it's a very versatile sort of fleet. Arbiters, you can get it really early, but it's really meant to complement other ships later on, after your tactical lab has some research to it. Until you actually have tactical research stuff done, don't bother building an Arbiter. Predator subs, it's half of your time playing this game is probably going to be with Predator subs hitting cargo. I'm just letting you know right now. So that's kind of like a rundown. I hope that helps some people. So I'll talk to y'all later. Bye bye.